Order. So just three of us at the moment. Is anybody else trying to get in?
Let's check. Oh, here is Ben.
Great.
And there's Paul. They're all starting to come down.
Yeah, that's how it usually goes. We'll pause a beat.
It says 5 participants, but I only see 4 up there.
Or
Us,
one.
right, but I don't see the 4th person. Oh, there's the
There's Emily. All right, well, welcome everyone. So we'll call the meeting to order. Agenda is fairly light. So we'll do the board meeting overview as usual. My membership is up for renewal, so that should be pretty brief. And then we'll talk about our interview questions and roundtable. So it appears no one from the public is attending.
Got no one.
All right. So the board meeting overview. So that was April 11th. There's a budget committee meeting. And let's see, May will be as well, is that right?
Yeah, so May 9th, which is next, not this Thursday, but next Thursday, the budget committee will meet now for the third time, but the first time they met was more to go over our supplemental budget, which we didn't need their approval to or action on a supplemental budget because it was under 10%, so the board was able to still approve of that. But Susanna, who was here at the time, she wanted to provide an opportunity for the budget committee to sort of understand what was in the supplemental budget. So our April meeting was the first time we actually dug into the new fiscal year budget with the budget committee. Went through a presentation that Christina and I gave. I was really appreciative to Christina's efforts as someone who was very new in helping to get that budget together in that presentation. And then in the May meeting coming up, presumably the budget committee will approve the budget. That begins a public noticing period for public comment for 30 days. And then at the June meeting, the board will hold a public hearing and adopt the budget for the new fiscal year, which begins July 1.
Okay. Well, and on that note, Susanna is out on an extended medical leave. So in that board meeting, Travis here was appointed acting temporary director. Is that the official title?
Yes, acting director is that the title that the board is using.
So and we were just discussing his late nights, trying to
It's
get
been,
things rolling.
it's been busy, yes.
Yeah. And then hooray, Ben was approved for membership on the CAC, and this is his first official meeting. Congratulations. They really didn't have any comments on the application. It was such a good application. So then a public meeting was opened to on the revised rules that we've all reviewed some time back. There's some written comments that affected some small changes. No verbal comments were presented during the public meeting, and so it was approved and it's officially enacted.
Mhm.
And those for Ben's enlightenment, that those were some rules that were brought up to date with DEQ rules. You might have listened to that part of it if you were there in the meeting. So moving on from there. In the director's report, there wasn't much detail, more of a discussion on what kind of information the board would like to get in that. And then there was an update from Karis Consulting that is recruiting the full-time or permanent director. I think that pretty well wraps that up.
Yeah, that was, I think, a good summation.
Thank you. Yeah, during the budget committee meeting times, they're anxious to move on.
Because they've been
That's
there
the
for an extra
marathons.
hour.
All right, so moving on for us. First thing is my 3-year membership has or is about to expire. So I submitted on our old, oh, that's something I didn't say. in the meeting, I presented, the directors meeting, I presented our new application. And they had no comments on that. So our new application is live now.
It is live.
So that's good. And at that time I filled out my renewal application, I used the old one because it wasn't official yet. So we look forward to that getting initiated. All right, so I don't know. I don't know that I've been chair while I had to renew. If I need to, we don't really have a process.
You probably should have someone else stand in to to.
Yeah.
Be
I mean, maybe I should let you take over for this portion of it.
Okay.
That's it.
Well, I haven't done this before, but sure.
I think
So-
the intent here, Kelly, would just be to host a discussion from everybody about the consideration of reappointing Jim and then entertain a motion to appoint him.
If anybody does wish to discuss it, I'll step out.
Yeah, so everybody, I don't know if you guys got the copy of his reapplication, but as we all know, he's been here for a long time and is interested in staying with us and maintaining his position as chair. So I would move to approve or
But I think as
recommend.
you would, as the chair, you would ask if there's
Oh, I
any
would
discussion. Yeah,
Okay.
with the person kind of facilitating the discussion.
Okay,
And then you'd ask to see if there's any discussion. If there is discussion, then great. And then you'd entertain a motion for
Okay.
someone else to move the reappointment.
all right. Would we like to have a discussion? Any comments, questions? Otherwise, I would.
Oh, I got one.
Yeah, I think Jim's done a wonderful job, really professional and on top of all the issues. And I look forward to, if he's approved, having him continue on.
Okay.
All right.
I think you're ready to ask if anybody wants to move to approve him.
Would anybody like to move to approve the application to stay on?
I move to approve.
And do we have a second?
I second.
Right. And then do we all need to
Any
vote?
discussion at this point?
Any discussion at this point? So we're good.
You're good.
All right.
Then a vote.
And then a vote. All right. All those in favor?
I'll just,
Aye.
Aye.
All right. So it's unanimous
Yep.
and
okay,
approved. Thank you, guys.
all right, so
Thank you for doing that.
that's board. That was a little funny, but
Robert's rule on the fly, right?
All right.
okay, so moving on then.
Did great.
Want to see about honing our interview questions a little bit. And Ben, being the most recent, hopefully you can give us some input. Traditionally, our interview process has been a little bit awkward and we're looking to make it a little smoother. So we have a list of questions that Kelly had put forward quite some time back.
I can pull them up here.
Great. Oh. Sorry about that. And in the past, there'd been some discussion of making interview questions available prior to the interview. Which I think we're all inclined to do, so.
With that, then, I mean, if the committee is agreeable to that idea, I think that would just be for LRAPA internally. If we receive an application, then part of our process would be
Just go ahead and
just say, as we arrange a time for them to come and participate for that interview during the CAC meeting, we would also provide, here's the questions that we're going to want to have a discussion about, so you can have an idea of how to prepare for that.
Well, and normally I contact them to set up the interview, so that would be easy enough to
At that time.
send those questions at that time too. Just trying to think here, the best way to go to look at this list.
So to give a little background to Ben too, I think one of the things that came out during our last discussion on this is we just want to make it really clear that it is open to anybody, that we're not trying to say that you have to have, you know, if we're asking about kind of your previous experience or that type of things, it's not to exclude anybody or to set expectations. So when we go through these, we want to make sure that it's open and not intimidating, right? Or
Right.
you know,
Right, the
So-
only requirement I would say is that you just have an interest in engaging and have an ability to contribute in discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other one that we've pushed in the past is make sure everyone knows that we're not at liberty to just work at anything we want to. We have to have board approval.
Right.
And we're not here to write rules for LRAPA.
Right, yeah, right.
So I might suggest, at the top of your list of questions, just kind of an introductory statement to the candidate, stating kind of what you just said.
And didn't we add a paragraph? Don't we have an introduction paragraph?
There is, it's on the actual website when people apply itself. There is some of that expectation setting there a little.
Maybe we could copy and
Maybe we
paste
could
that to this.
pull
if you're
that
gonna-
up.
If you're gonna be sending that, you know, as a PDF to somebody, maybe copying and pasting whatever the website says. Can you show us on the screen what the website currently says?
Because we talked about having like yeah, sure. We talked about having a set of questions for them to submit and then having follow-up questions. Is there a separate list that we've started for follow-up questions, or are we thinking we're gonna cut this down?
Well, I think we're gonna look at this and see what we would want to include. I mean, it could be the whole thing as potential questions,
Okay.
but just kind of look at the merit of the questions.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, we
so
welcome
that's-
all application, yeah. The responsibility to make the final decision is up to the board of directors.
Yeah, I don't know if we need to repeat that one.
Okay,
Agreed.
yeah.
But
I was
that,
more talking about
yeah, that
what you
last
said.
sentence could
yeah.
easily,
Yeah, the last sentence that we welcome. Okay.
you folks on Zoom, feel free to chime in anytime.
Yeah, I
Um,
thought the online application was great, and there was definitely some overlap with those questions to the ones that were just these ones on the screen right now. So
Yeah, that's kind of what's on my mind of let's eliminate questions that are already answered. And get to ones that we might want more depth on.
And there are a lot, and if to be honest, going through all of those in what would be like a 20-minute sort of,
Yeah.
interview would be a real challenge, I would imagine.
We could probably pare this down. And we don't necessarily need to ask every question in every interview.
Yeah.
Maybe we want the breadth to go somewhere depending on the application.
So that being said, maybe we find the questions that align with these as close. We leave those as the primary questions, and then any remainders would be open during the interview who would like to, because something like that, because then we would have, like you said, we don't have to go through them all, but then that way we could actually engage during the interview. Because otherwise it's just been really a little bit awkward of like, these are the same questions, we don't really have any other questions.
Yeah.
And we'd at least have a starting point of like, does that seem
All right.
reasonable?
Well, should we just do a quick down this list and see what we like or don't like, and maybe we can pare it down pretty quickly that way?
Yeah, and identify what you guys think would be the primary questions, right, that they would answer on the application itself, right? Application questions versus follow-up?
Sure. Well, yeah, or
Okay,
say if it's already asked in the application, do we want to keep it? Is that?
well, I thought we were trying to actually
Remove some.
reword these a little bit differently, because, like, are you currently serving on any advisory, like, so we rewrote it over here, so it would replace this one.
What I recall from the discussion was there was kind of a consensus, and I might be misremembering, so if this is wrong, then please correct me, but an idea was that we have some good questions on the application, which essentially can help inform what a conversation would be during the interview. So it's like, we have this information that we're seeing in your application, and we just want to talk about it more with you.
Mhm.
And it's not so much a, here's the list of questions that we need to run through during this interview. It's more of a, we now have a better understanding of who you are based off how you answered our application materials or filled out the application materials. Let that be an entry point to a discussion with you on your interest in being on the committee.
Mhm.
And so I think that a perspective that could be helpful for the committee to look at here is these secondary follow-up questions. Are they, well, for one, redundant from what's kind of already been established and put on the website? And then two, is there anything in there that's particularly helpful that would be a like, oh yes, this would be a great additional question to ask that can kind of help us explore some of the information that's been received from the committee. So that's kind of my thought on where some helpful discussion here could be.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, and I don't want to get so specific that we don't feel like we can ask questions that aren't on our list.
Mhm.
Okay, well, let's just take a look at this list and see what we have. So number one, what do you think is the most important role of an advisory committee, which is pretty similar to the very first question on our current application, which is, in your view, what should be the primary focus of an advisory committee in influencing environmental policy?
Wait, what?
I was reading off the application
Oh,
that
okay.
is currently live.
Hmm.
So I'm saying the application question and question one are pretty similar.
Okay.
Is the first stack of papers that are down there on the table, is that the current live?
Actually, it's the old one. That's what was
Oh.
confusing me, is that we don't have the live one.
Oh, they're on the
Two.
website. at the
I mean, I
moment,
can
but-
pull them up, but I don't know how to share two screens at once. So
Well, I
how
think
do
we
you-
can
If it's necessary,
We can share that one. I think they're on the screen. And then for those who are online, if they just go to our website and go to the CAC committee, they can find that. But if you, Heather, just want to pull up on Chrome there, just pull, you don't have to stop sharing your screen, but just
Okay.
bring that up and then scroll down. Then we can see those items as well.
Yeah, I think since I missed the last meeting, I didn't realize which questions had been selected to go live.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yes. we
So
did.
I thought
Okay.
we were now finalizing that,
No.
but this is just follow-up questions.
Those are kind of like follow-up,
Yeah.
yeah, so the questions, we went through the
Ah.
process last time. And we said,
Right.
okay, here's what our application questions are going to be. And then I think now the focus is on when we're actually doing the interview. What is the way that
Perfect.
interview can be more effective? And I think maybe that's the talking or the place where we have a discussion here, the question being to the CAC. Do you feel that a secondary list of questions during an interview is effective, or is there another approach during that interview process that would be more effective in getting an understanding of that individual's interests?
that's true. That's the wider question. Do we want to even have these or have them informally and not provide them to applicants before the interview?
I mean, part of the goal of this exercise was to have some in our back pocket, so we're not awkwardly sitting, not having anything to ask.
Yeah.
So I would say having it like, maybe like 5 that we may, like, that we could give them that, like, depending on how the conversation goes, we may ask these 5. And it's not necessarily all of them, it's not necessarily, but like, give them a heads up of like, if we're interested.
Yeah. Well, how about this? What if we all just take a minute, look through this list of questions, kind of mark in your mind the top few, and then we'll share.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
And how many do we, yeah, I do like your idea though, of saying which ones are the same. Because
Well, we'll get into that.
I didn't realize they weren't taken out of this list.
There was, I think, reference to that when we were kind of going through and deciding.
Here's a paper copy of the current.
Thank you.
It's a little hard to read. But... Okay, we good with that? So they have it on the screen, right?
No,
They have
Oh,
the
well, they-
12
they
questions.
have the
12
questions like this, they don't have this.
Right, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
So let's all just take a couple minutes and look over the 15 questions and maybe mark the ones that you think will be, at least in your mind, mark the ones that be the most useful.
Maybe the top 5, is that what you're thinking?
Even top 3.
Top 3, okay.
How we doing? Okay, why don't you give us your top three, and we'll just go around.
Well, interestingly, after looking at what's on the application, I think we've already chosen the best of the questions that were on this list. I'm just gonna be honest, which makes sense. That was
Sure.
the goal. So I guess just for follow-up questions, really, I only circled two that I could see being an engaging conversation, which would be, I really like the idea of getting other people's feedback about stakeholders and outreach. So, and I think that's like kind of on a positive thing of like any ideas on,
So
you know,
that's-
improving engagement and outreach would be,
so
could be
it's
good.
11.
Number 11. And then 13, just curious about how staying up on all of this stuff, whether, you know, on legislation and changes, would be kind of interested, you know.
Insight into how informed and, you know, in the know
And
there.
resources and what we could do better on it kind of ties into that same conversation.
Okay, Paul?
Yeah, so I noted, I thought a couple of questions that were good was number 6. How well do you understand LRAPA's rules and programs? I recall we've had a couple of applicants who had great concerns about issues that you know, were not in LRAPA's jurisdiction at all. So I think that would be something helpful. And again, I guess related would be question number 7. What would you do if you disagreed with LRAPA's current implementation of regulations? There again, I think sometimes people, you know, have concerns about, you know, environmental quality issues, and so they apply for the CAC, and you know, they might, you know, might think LRAPA should be working in areas that, you know, there's not legal jurisdiction for LRAPA to be involved in.
Okay. Anything else?
No, that's all I had.
Okay. How about you, Ben?
I think my top two would be 9 and 10. So, you know, figuring out what kind of how you work through challenges as a committee member, and then reviewing, you know, getting a bit more familiar with LRAPA and like what kind of measurements for success that LRAPA is taking, and like, yeah, getting a take on what you would find most useful for, you know, measuring that success.
Okay, thank you. Peter?
Yeah, I thought 9, 10, and 11 and 3, especially 10 and 11, I agree. That seems to get at the core of being a citizen advisory member is, you know, how do we rate the metrics of the performance of LRAPA? That's something that I think the organization would be interested in hearing from people not in the organization, but who are very engaged with the organization, as we are as committee members. And 11 is how to improve outreach and stakeholder engagement. I think that's kind of goes to the core of being a citizens advisory committee. And like I said, 3 and 13 are also I think pretty relevant to doing, and it would expand upon the questions that we already have in the written application.
Okay. And Evelina?
Yeah, I picked 7, 9, and 11. I mean, I'm not, everything else seems to be overlapping with the application. I have them side by side, open together, with maybe a couple, but yeah, 7 would be, sure, you can express your voice. I don't know if that has any matter into the actual regulation, but it's good to hear other people's perspective. 9 was my second pick or choice. If applicable, what challenges have you faced while serving on the committee before? Kind of good to know, you know, feedback. How did they do? Did they leave? Why did they leave? Was it on good terms or bad terms? And then I picked 11. as my third choice.
Okay,
So that was important.
So looking at the printout of what our current questions are, it seemed to me that number 9, or sorry, number 10,
Mhm.
the metrics is actually on there. We just reworded it because we thought metrics
Uh-huh.
was maybe not the right term. Right, so doesn't it say?
What specific factors or aspects do you think are most important to consider when assessing how well?
Oh, Rapa's
Rapa's
doing.
its job?
That was the metrics. I think we reworded the metrics question to be.
Okay,
And not that we can't,
Yeah.
and then. Let's see. So that one was on the application, but that would give us like 5 if you count. The ones
Yeah.
that were most liked.
13's
Five
on there
follow-ups.
too.
I flagged 4, what makes you a
Oh, yeah.
good candidate, but that's more of a follow-up on overview.
And I
here.
couldn't tell if that's where this one got cut off, because it
Oh,
says,
Yeah, what unique contributions do you envision?
so that might be what makes you a good part of that. I'm
Mhm.
not sure where the rest of it went.
Yeah, that's true.
What other ones did you
Let's see.
like?
I did 5.
Hmm.
Almost as a subset of 9, actually, like a follow-up question, and 11. Okay, so if we say that, then we had 1 for 3. We'll skip my 4, 1 for 6, 2 for 7, 4 for 9. Whoop. 2 for 10, 4 for 11, 2 for 13. So, gosh. That's 7 questions.
I feel like that's,
Should we just call that good?
and we can just have those, like, present those to a candidate,
say-
and then when we're going around the room, it gives us something to.
These questions may be asked during.
And the thought being that these are, if it turns out the interview is a room of silence.
Yeah. Basically.
Here are some things that we can instead talk about,
Yeah.
kind of
Talking
like fill the
points.
space, and here's how we can like begin, initiate conversations and try to get better understanding. That seems reasonable to me.
Do we feel like any of these favorite ones are, need to be reworded?
So my only concern is that Teresa had some good comments.
Oh, she
And,
was able to join us today, yeah.
and so maybe we send out with the header, the 7 questions, kind of, what we're, and just get.
So these days. We're not doing minutes to members?
Oh, yeah, I can.
Oh, yes, we do put the minutes in, they go into the board, but sending them out to the CAC, I think that, yeah, we
Okay.
can establish that. So in the minutes, I think that, yes, sending this so Teresa can have an opportunity to see them and understand what she missed out and be helpful for you when, you were
Well-
absent, others are absent.
Yeah, and we're just doing this within the committee. The board doesn't need to
Yeah.
Right.
be deeply involved. So we could open the floor next meeting to see if anybody has any refinements, but I don't feel like we need to beat this too
Mm-mm.
hard anymore.
No, I just remember she had some good feedback
yeah,
about
she
some
had
things that I hadn't
excellent
thought of,
feedback.
so
Well, let's
maybe
just
one last look.
plan on giving it a few minutes next meeting to see if anybody has follow-up, and if something occurs to you between now and then, you can feel free to raise it then. Sound good?
This is a related thing, in terms of like agenda topics for the CAC. So the board, at their most recent meeting, one of the things that they indicated was it would be good for the board to update the goals that they have set for the agency, because it's been a little bit since El Rapa's goals were, last reflected upon and then updated. So as the acting director, I'm wanting to, in this upcoming board meeting, bring there's an agenda item that's to try to find a time for the board to have a work session to explore some goals. And I'm wanting to target August when they normally don't meet. to instead have a meeting that will just be a focused work session to establish what the new goals are. And I think between, so May, June, and July's CAC meeting could potentially be opportunities for the CAC to craft some, maybe not necessarily the goals specifically themselves, but identify some places where maybe the board could receive input or some, advising perspective from the CAC that would be good for them to see and ingest before they go into a upcoming, at some point, work session as they start to establish the goals. So that could be something that on the May meeting, Jim, when you're there, proposing this potential idea of the CAC taking not almost like a first stab at some ideas for the board to consider or to reflect on as they establish some goals could be a worthwhile discussion group for this
Look
group.
at, there are current goals written out.
Yes, there are.
So we could just use that as a launch pad and just make non-specific recommendations.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in terms of projects that, because it sounds like the application, revisiting that and then getting these questions to improve the interview process for the CAC, that seems like that project's starting to kind of come to a close. Yeah. And so as a potential next idea, I think this could be a useful one that would provide some information and some insight for the board to get the CAC's perspective before they dig into a work session to more formally set those things.
Okay. Anybody want to say anything about any of that?
I have a question about, which I guess is not related to me, it's more roundtable, but survey, if we're getting from the public, if we're gonna, do we have a schedule of which we wanted, the CAC wants to check back in on how the survey? Or are we just
Yeah.
thinking annually? Cause that's
Well,
a topic that we,
I think we're done, so let's go ahead and transition into roundtable, and you have started.
okay.
So, yeah, they wanted an annual update of permit holder survey. And the idea was we'd do an email invitation to fill the survey out. Trying to remember when the last one was.
It was essentially when we first established that public, survey that's on our website, continues to be on our website. We had an initial round of people who filled it out when we first sort of published it and said, hey, world, we launched the survey. Please give us some of your time and attention. Reviews or people filling out that survey have pretty much gone to zero at this point. So what would be needed is for us to send out another external messaging to some degree to both our sources as well as just the general public of saying, hey, don't forget we have this survey. Please take the time to give us your insight.
What time of year was that last time we invited permit holders to fill out the survey? Was that?
It was in the fall.
Okay.
Okay. I guess one of the things that would be good for me is calendar reminders or having a regular schedule. Do we want to send something out quarterly? Do we want to send something, is there a certain time of year?
Well, the board wanted consistency.
That was from
and
the
they
permit
wanted an
holders. Though.
Annual for permit
Right.
holders. So yeah, we should mark our calendar to plan to do that every year.
Okay.
I'm sure we could look back.
And then did we want it in for the reminders to the general, to the other people that, is that something one time only, or did we want to do that on some sort of schedule?
The point of expanding the survey, which historically had just been of permit holders, which we did issue that, but then the survey grew to expand and include a public component to it. In my mind, it seems like a good equitable approach would be if we're going to take the time and effort to send out a reminder to our permitted sources to say, hey, give us your feedback. We also should use that same opportunity to put some external outreach to just the general public, whatever that may look like, to say, hey, please, take the opportunity to give us some feedback on how the agency's performing. And I could see that in a number of different ways. I mean, there's always the posting on social media, but I think you're missing a targeted group in that sense. We have an email listserv where people sign up to receive updates from us, whatever may be going on. So that could be another good avenue to where we say, hey, reminder, we have this survey, please fill it out. As well as then there's other direct outreach to community groups or neighborhood associations where you say, hey, we have this the survey. I don't know if it would be worth putting in a newsletter for the, or, you know, there could be some public affairs sort of component to outreach to that as well, worth exploring and figuring out what that may look like.
Okay, but maybe annually at the same, around the same time.
About the, it
Okay.
would seem like if we're gonna pay an effort to reach out to this industry side of things, we should also reach out to the public side of things as well.
Maybe make a note to take this up in September.
Okay, and maybe I'll look up when it went
Yeah,
out
we might have done
officially.
that.
That does sound right, though.
Anybody out there have anything to add? Okay, anything else for roundtable?
Nope, that's it for me.
Okay. So Ben.
Oh, excuse me, on roundtable, I won't be attending the May meeting.
Okay, thank you. Hope you're doing something fun.
It's fun, it is, and I'm looking forward to it. And also I wanted to say welcome to Ben.
Yes. So Ben, I can't remember if you were here last time for roundtable. This is just our period of time when committee members can bring up any topic they want. So is there anything on your mind?
Yeah, thank you. I don't really have anything this round.
Okay,
But yeah, excited to be here and
that's fine too.
Ben, I did have a quick question for you though. So Heather was updating our webpage to put your name on the webpage, and we have sort of a, you know, like for Jim who works for Roseboro, we sort of list that he's employed by Roseboro. And so kind of how you're connected to that segment. As the agricultural segment, we put, what was it? We put a,
Lane County hazelnut farmer.
is that appropriate or is there? Should we change that to something that might be more appropriate? We weren't totally sure.
Could be the actual farm name.
yeah, let's do that.
What's the farm name?
It's called My Brother's Farm.
We talked about it.
Yes, and we weren't sure, we were like, is that the name of the farm or does he mean his?
Oh, the apostrophe is after the S. So,
Apostrophe after.
yeah.
Okay.
So plural
Because there's
brothers.
3 of them.
Yes. Okay, so we'll update that. Thank you.
All right, let's see. Paul.
I just noticed I had occasion to be traveling around to some of the other counties, and I noticed there's a lot of seasonal, agricultural or forestry type burning going on, of course, because it's this time of year, and those areas would not be in El Rapa's jurisdiction. But generally, the regulations on, burning slash piles and things like that, is it very much different in El Rapa's jurisdiction compared to DEQ's jurisdiction?
Yeah, so we're the same as DEQ would be, which in under Oregon state law, agriculture, sort of they cut out their own special exemption to a lot of the rules. So if there would be an action of someone doing some burning that would by normal circumstances not be allowed under our rules, but we went to that location and said, oh, this is a farm and what they're doing is related to their farming work, then that falls outside our authority to intervene. And I think that's a right to farm sort of component of Oregon's law. So we are the same legal framework as DEQ outside of Lane County is also applicable within Lane County.
Oh, okay.
As a follow-up question to that, though, somebody was telling me that like field burning, grass burning was banned.
Mhm.
Like that was outlawed. So that is obviously related to the agricultural side of things. So like mass.
There still is some grass burning and field burning that does take place. A lot of it is up by Salem.
Okay.
But the legislature did make changes to make it more, to limit it more. And I don't know all of the specific
Okay.
details on how that was, but it still is something that does take place. It's just the ability to do it there's a few more hoops that people have to
Okay.
jump through.
Cause yeah, I've heard a few people saying that recently. I'm
Yeah,
like,
in the late 80s, early 90s, there was a fire that blew thick smoke across I-5 and caused a multi-car crash.
Oh, wow.
And it was a hot topic.
Related to field burning.
Yeah, about that. And that's when a lot of the field burning was banned.
Okay.
But that was through Department of Agriculture, I believe. So then Ben, I could probably talk to some of this, but especially in the grass seed industry, they moved to propane burners instead of just more of a controlled open burn or other practices.
And there's still some of that that's done. They're actually, interestingly, last year, there was a meeting with DEQ. We were talking about some of the field burning and exploring if, because of the day that they wanted to do that on, if that was going to potentially create an ozone issue in the sense that more VOCs were going to be going into the air and it was going to be super sunny and super hot. It turns out that, at least according to the monitoring that DEQ had, they did not see an elevated spike in that from those activities, but there was a discussion about that, exploring that potential.
Okay.
Evelina.
Yeah, Travis, by the way, I really enjoyed your newsletter about the ozone season preparedness. So
Oh,
I was
thank you.
wondering, did you send out to the group this email or to everybody from the industry or?
I sent that, when I send out a news release, I include the board and the CAC on that email. So that way people can see the updates of all of our press release. And then if you may have seen it on our Emma newsletter we send out, I also send that. So if you subscribe to there, you saw that as well. And then our other people who are on our contact list includes all of the local media here, at least as far as like that includes just the newsroom emails themselves, specific reporters who I've interacted with. I will add them to that list, as well as like agency partners, whether it's OHA, DEQ, or whoever is on our media list. It's about 60 some odd contacts that I send it out to. So long running list.
Awesome. Well, I'm planning on distributing your letter to the meal workers here and everybody on the premises, but yeah, that was great.
Awesome. Well, thank you. If there's any like follow-up questions or if there's any more like, hey, tell us more, let me know and I'm happy to provide that information.
Okay, thank you.
So a longtime permit writer, Kelly Conlon, is retiring from Maratha. It's her last day. Would she be comfortable to be invited in or?
If she wants to, but she's sometimes a little more shyer of a personality
that's what
type
I
in
was
general, so yeah.
All right, well, pass on her good wishes for retirement. So in our bylaws, a committee member who misses 3 meetings unexcused is to be removed from the committee. I don't remember the official wording, but we had briefly talked about Misty Frost missing meetings, and it's been way more than 3. I sent her an email last month and got no response. I'm not sure if we have other contact.
I can check.
Yeah. So I guess we'll give one more try, but we're kind of pushing it. We probably do need to remove her from the committee. Unless
Well, that
we hear
was tough
something.
because she did say it was really hard for her, but on her application, she said that she would be.
I know
So
that
you should be communicating with
Yeah,
us. I mean,
yeah,
it's
no
the rule is
communication.
unexcused absence. If you
Oh, yeah.
contact me or Heather or anybody and say I won't be able to make it, you don't have to even justify it.
Right.
To let us know.
Okay.
So.
well, I think what we can do is we can send an email to Misty and then I think we have her number and I can place a phone call and be like, hey, Misty, we miss you. Just curious, make sure you're doing okay and everything's all right. And we'd love to see you at the next meeting, but we kind of need you to be there otherwise.
Or at least respond. Say if
we
you
might
want to stay active.
indicate so. But yeah, we, on our end, we'll pay a little bit of effort to try to connect
Okay.
and see where that gets us. But then we'll update everybody at the next meeting.
Okay.
Perfect.
Let's see what else. Did we have any members coming up on that?
Paul hasn't submitted. He technically expired in March.
Oh, Paul.
Oh, no.
I have been deficient in my duties because I didn't fill out the application yet.
Okay, well, you'll be the first one to use the new application, so that'd be good.
So we have an agenda item already.
Was yours coming up this
August.
summer?
August, okay.
Okay, so you have time. All right.
Did I hear that I have till August?
No.
I have till August.
That was Kelly.
Your application, your time on the CAC technically expired in March, but we are always appreciative of our volunteer effort and time and interest. So we take that, very kind of lightly. But at a good opportunity for you, Paul, to fill out those questions. They don't, have to be an essay or anything, but that would just be all that's needed for your application. So when you have a second, that'd be appreciated.
I'll get on that.
All right.
Thank you.
Has it always been standard practice to resubmit an application rather than just a verbal confirmation that you want to stay?
I'm
Is
not
that-
sure.
It has,
Okay.
but we could look at changing that. Does
It
seem
seems a little
funny.
odd to fill out an
Extra
application.
step to ask a volunteer to do. That's true.
That's something that we're looking at right now with the McKinsey Watershed Council and what you need to do to renew because they're instigating 3-year terms.
Yeah.
And it got as far on the formal side as like a memorandum of agreement to as informal as can an email that just says, yes, I would like to continue being adequate. So just food for thought, because it is awkward refilling out applications after you've already been.
Yeah. Well, we have time. We could talk about that more.
I do think there's some validity to that thought in the sense that even for like the board, which also the board is, a volunteer committee as well.
Yeah.
In the sense that if you have identified someone who is on the board and they're able to participate and engage, exploring how you can retain that effort from those individuals, I think is worthwhile. Especially when it comes a time where I think that the level of public service orientation just in our general society sort of consciousness is maybe lesser than it used to be. I think it can be challenging, like with the budget committee, for example, for APA's budget committee, we have 2 vacancies there and it has been challenging to fill that vacancies. Paul's on the budget committee. Thank you for that, Paul. And so in that light, is it how challenging do you want to make it for individuals to retain their volunteership, so to speak? So I think that's worth, exploring.
Yeah. Well, on one hand, you don't want the committee to be this
Rigid, forever people.
closed group. But at least in the past several years, there've been plenty of openings and really any qualified candidate has an opportunity. So I do kind of lean towards simplifying the renewal process. Any thoughts out there?
Yeah, I'd be in favor of for existing members to just signal that they want to stay on and that be adequate and not go through a involved or any type of process for renewal. The only footnote to that is I would hope that if a person was going to be going off the commission, they would give a couple of months at least, notice ahead of time,
Mhm.
have a smoother transition.
True. Well, if we went the more simple route, it could still be reported to the board that the term has ended and they would like to renew, and I think we could just
Report out
call
on
it
that.
good, yeah,
Mhm.
but let them know that we've got a renewal. And then they would have an opportunity to get into it if they wanted.
So would they just email the chair, you, and let you know, or?
I think even in the meeting, say,
Coming
before
up.
your term
Okay.
expires, would you like to renew?
And it would be in the meeting minutes, and it would be
Mhm.
Yeah.
documented.
Well, we could just do that right now for Paul if you want.
Do we need to check do we have
Well, we should check,
bylaw, like,
yeah, before we
bylaws
just
is
Okay.
right?
do that.
True. I'll look at the bylaws, and
Okay.
if there's nothing involved with that, I'll just go ahead and bring this up at the board meeting. So Paul, maybe hold off on the application.
Can I ask a clarifying question? So like if there's say somebody wanted Paul's seat right now, like, is the process that like Paul and that other person would come to this meeting and we, as the CAC, would vote on who to appoint to that position?
For any of the seats, we allow multiple people to represent, and in our bylaws, there's a maximum of
14, I think it is.
14 members. I don't think we've ever bumped into 14. So at least how things stand, anybody who's interested and we refer to the board for approval and gets approved, then they're on. It's pretty open. And Paul is representing general public, which we'd like to have more of. So it wouldn't be necessary for anybody to bump. You know, Evelina, Kelly and I are all representing industry. In the past, we've had like 5 people, which was a little concerning. We didn't want it to look like we were skewing to industry, but
I think there
Interested.
is a component of, you know, for the public, there's a little bit of an extra lift. Like one of the challenges with Misty, who's also is a public seat, is this is her essentially her lunch hour. So, because she has a job, and so joining the CAC requires her to join virtually and kind of participate during her lunch hour from work. And it was a lunch hour from, you know, industry as well, but I imagine typically industry's appreciative of that staff time being spent on the CAC. So I think there is a little bit of our meeting time that kind of complicates that a bit for the public members, and just worth noting.
yeah, I think you're right about that.
And on our, I think, public survey, we do ask about times that might be more conducive to meetings and that
We
sort
do.
of thing. So, you know, we get some feedback. But yeah, it's true. We usually have more trouble filling a position than competition over multiple positions. Yeah, I've never
Okay.
seen anybody apply who, and not have a spot, I think.
I think if we ever got up to 14 members and somebody applied, we would reconsider all of that, how that would be handled.
Gotcha. Yeah, I guess I got a little confused at the last meeting that whoever spoke first from the public, and they were asking about joining.
Oh, yeah, that was someone who had applied and had, I don't know how to,
So that was a public participant who had interest in being on the CAC, but the board determined would not be productive for that individual to be on the CAC. And so he was essentially, you know, saying that he's still interested in joining the CAC and was asking if maybe there could be a reconsideration of that. From my mind, I think there's always, if some of your loudest critics, if you kind of invite them in and have them get a better understanding of how things work and why, you can turn your critics into supporters. So I do think there's an opportunity there in the future for the committee to explore. But that was some of the helpful context to that, Ben, that you didn't have an understanding to, is he had applied previously, but the board decided that they would prefer if you did not join the CAC.
Gotcha. Thank you.
yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
Mhm.
See how that got unclear. All right, well, anything else? That filled our time nicely. Okay, let's adjourn.
Right, right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.